All right, welcome everyone to the call. We are super excited to have you here with us today as we release our 2019 and 2020 Georgia Environmental Scorecard. I'm going to kick it over to Jeanette for some opening words, and then I'll say a few words, introduce myself, and we'll dive right into the bills that we scored this year on environment.
Thank you, Briante, and hello everyone, happy Friday. My name is Jeanette Gare. I'm the Director of Environment Georgia. We're a statewide organization that uses organizing and advocacy to protect Georgia's environment. So our air, our water, our really amazing green spaces. And this scorecard, it is really, it's a challenge. So I was to kick this off, I wanted to kind of answer the question of why do we do a scorecard? Because it certainly is at some points a very mind-numbing undertaking. But I think it's because GCV, Environment Georgia, we really acknowledge and believe that policy and what happens at Georgia's legislature can have a profound impact on our environment. And Georgia's environment is definitely worth protecting. So we have a beautiful coast, 100 miles of coast that are amazing with some of the largest pristine salt marshes in the country. We have the start of the Appalachian Trail. We have beautiful rivers and mountains that are still very wild in places. So amazing environmental places to protect that every Georgian I think really cherishes and loves. And then we also know that the air, the water, the green spaces in our state can have really profound impacts on how healthy a community is, how healthy a person is. And so we want to make sure that the air and water that sometimes we might take, clean air and water that we take for granted, is there for people to enjoy in this generation and future generations. And we think a scorecard helps to tell the story of what were the policies that were really critical this year that help to protect those places and those ideals. We also obviously are letting people know which legislators really helped in that effort. I'll be the first to admit that a scorecard is not perfect in telling that story. It's part of the story. There are a lot of challenges that we kind of debated seriously as we put this together. One example is there's always legislation that never actually makes it to a vote on the floor of the House or the Senate. And so we can't score some of the bills that we think are the most important. Another great example of one of the challenges that we always face is what to do with people who miss a day at the legislature. So if you weren't actually there to vote, sometimes for a pretty good reason, how do we count that? In the end, we penalize you because we think, you know, if you weren't there to vote, it doesn't make it actually easier for us to pass the bill. We still need to find those, you know, 91 votes in the House. And so, but every year we have those debates. So I think I want to acknowledge up front that scorecards are not perfect. They don't tell a perfect story, but they tell a really important story. I also want to note, so what we're going to do, Briante mentioned we're going to get into the bills that we score. We're also going to take a minute after we do that to recognize some of the honorable mentions that we have. So one of the ways that we try to balance the fact that we know a scorecard is not perfect is to shout out people who do go above and beyond in a legislative session to really pull some weight on some of the bills that we're tracking and paying attention to. Again, some of those bills never actually make it to a vote. So we're going to go through those. And then we've also asked folks who either got an honorable mention or a 100% to join us today. And for the folks who are able to do that, we're going to give them just a quick minute to talk about, you know, why they care about the environment, how they feel about the environment, and maybe either talk about a story from the past session, which was certainly a unique session, or maybe looking ahead, some of the things that they're excited to work on in the coming years. All right, so I'm going to hand it back to Briante. But I'm so excited to see everyone today, and thank you.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much. Yeah, Jeanette did a really wonderful job framing the scorecard. So for those of you who don't know, I'm Briante McCorkle. I am the Executive Director at Georgia Conservation Voters. And what we do at Georgia conservation voters is to help advance policy that supports and promotes environmental and climate justice. We, hold elected officials accountable for their actions and votes on the environment through tools like the scorecards. And we also campaign for candidates who we believe will be champions. So that's our mission at GCV, and the scorecard is really important to us for all of the reasons that Jeanette said. We've got a beautiful environment in Georgia. We've got people who depend on the air and water being clean here. And so scorecards are definitely a challenge, and we appreciate everyone who's called and reached out to discuss their scores and want to continue to invite people to do that. For us, the scorecard is very much a tool to have a conversation with legislators about their values on environment, on sustainability, on climate change, and to have a discussion about the votes and to work together better in future sessions so that we can really achieve great things for Georgia's people and the planet. So I'm going to dive into some of the bills that came up this legislative session. We had a lot of really good stuff, but of course everything didn't come to a vote. So we're going to basically just start with what did come up, and then we'll talk about other things that could have come up when we get to talking about our honorable mentions. So let me get right into sharing this screen. So, all right, so we scored a total of 14 bills and resolutions, and we included the descriptions in the scorecard so that you can read them, and I'm going to kind of talk through them now. To be clear, that there were 14 bills total, but the Senate scored on 13 votes, and the House got scored on 13 votes. So 14 bills total in the scorecard, but each chamber got scored on 13. So let's talk through what came up in the House. So House Bill 105, it was a bill that was amended to help public transportation systems. So after years of providing no funding on transit, the legislature amended House Bill 105 and established a fee on all ride-share trips that will be appropriated to help fund and run mass transit. Of course, transportation is a big sector that's contributing to carbon emissions, so we definitely like to see alternative modes of transit expanded and supported. So House Bill 105 passed 150-7, and the House and in the Senate 41-3. It was signed by Governor Kemp, so the environmental vote for this bill was to vote yes. The next bill is House Bill 316. This one focused on new voting machines for upcoming elections. Understand this is a controversial bill, so I will say that this bill replaces the previously used voting machines, and it ignored the voting concerns from cybersecurity experts and voters. So House Bill 316 passed the House 101-69 and the Senate 35-21. It was signed by Governor Kemp. The environmental vote for this bill was a no. And so I've had a couple of conversations with legislators, and I want to be really clear that Georgia Conservation Voters does work at the intersection of environment and climate, environmental justice, and democracy. And it's really important that people are able to cast their votes safely and securely for the leadership that they would like to see represent them. And so when there are questions about the integrity of our voting system, it is very much an environmental issue. So we did include that bill, and I'm happy to talk to any legislators that want to discuss that directly. I know it's a kind of a unique topic, so I want to make sure that people see this as an invitation to a conversation. And so that's House Bill 316. House Bill 445 weakens the Shore Protection Act, and it allows development closer to the ocean. And so we definitely, it allows development closer to the ocean. It encourages erosion and threatens flooding as sea levels rise. So House Bill 445 passed the House 93-75, and the Senate 35-21. It was signed by Governor Kemp, and the environmental vote for that bill was no. House Bill 545, this one was a really hot one all session long. House Bill 545 is also known as the Right to Farm or Right to Harm legislation. It would have empowered large industrial agricultural operations and CAFOs, concentrated animal feeding operations, by giving them leeway to ignore homes and landowners nearby. House Bill 545 passed House 107-58 and the Senate 28-21. It failed to get final sign-off in the House after amendments were made in the Senate, so it ultimately did not become law. The environmental vote here was no. House Bill 857, it was inspired by communities that were struggling with the toxic air and water pollution created by burning creosote, which is a known carcinogen, and it's soaked in, they were creosote-soaked railroad tires, and creosote is a known carcinogen. And so the legislation outlaws the practice in almost all facilities in Georgia. House Bill 857 passed the House 163-0 and the Senate 48-0. It was signed by Governor Kemp, and the environmental vote for this bill was yes. All right, two more House bills. House Bill 1045 changes the law to allow counties to spend tax dollars on flood prevention and a nod to the challenges posed by climate and increased coastal flooding. House Bill 1045 passed the House 168-1, but failed to be brought to a vote in the Senate. So the environmental vote for this bill was yes. And HB 1057 was inspired by local communities grappling with the practice of dumping chicken plant sludge, rotten eggs, and septage in the guise of fertilizer or soil amendments. The bill will allow local governments to regulate this dumping and outlaw the worst practices. So House Bill 1057 passed the House and Senate and was signed by the governor, and the environmental vote for this bill was yes. So I'm going to stop here, and we've got plenty of space in the Q&A if you have questions about these bills or want to go further. So please hold your questions then. We'll be fielding those at the end of the call. And I'll turn it over to Jeanette to go through the resolutions and Senate bills. Hey, Jeanette, you're muted.
Why does that still happen? You'd think I'd have figured that one out by now, this far into the pandemic. All right, so the first House resolution that we scored is HR 48. This was the resolution that declared the House of Representatives to be in opposition to offshore oil and gas drilling and exploration. Folks might remember that 2 years ago when this resolution passed, the Trump administration had just announced their intention, excuse me, to start drilling for oil and gas off the coast of Georgia. And so this resolution really stepped up and put the House of Representatives in clear opposition. It passed the House 125-36 and is a resolution, so did not need to go to the Senate or Governor Kemp. And the correct environmental vote was yes. HR 164, so this is a really exciting one to talk about because it resulted in a amendment, or not an amendment, but a ballot question being placed on the ballot for this November. I think it is amendment number 1. And what HR 164 did, beyond kind of kicking off that process, was it set up a process whereby the majority of the fees that we collect to do things like clean up toxic waste sites or illegal tire dumps would actually go to those cleanups. So it's basically making sure that you get the cleanup that you're paying for. Right now, we know that a lot of that money ends up being siphoned off to other parts of the state budget. And the result is we have thousands of tires littering our rivers and green spaces. We have a long list of toxic waste sites being that are waiting to be cleaned up. And so our hope is, once this amendment passes in November, that we'll be able to see some of those cleanups actually come to pass. So again, the environmental vote for that would be yes. On to the Senate bill. So SB 43 is the first Senate bill that we scored. Folks know that the expansion at Plant Vogtle, the 2 new nuclear reactors that are being built there, are billions of dollars over budget. And one of the things that the utilities that are funding that cost overrun need to do is to obviously raise more money to pay for the expansion. Dalton Utilities wanted to avoid having to put that question to their ratepayers, and so actually passed a law that allows them to avoid a bond election to collect more money to fund Plant Vogtle. The legislation passed in the House 91-75 and in the Senate 42-12. It was signed by Governor Kemp, and we opposed this legislation, so the environmental vote was no. SB 95 is a good bill. It makes it easier for utilities to finance solar and wind projects. It passed the House 165-0 and the Senate 51-0, and was signed by Governor Kemp. And again, environmental vote was yes. SB 123, this is the first bill to pass in Georgia actually grappling with a problem of coal ash, toxic coal ash. It basically discourages the import of toxic coal ash by increasing the fee that waste haulers pay. Right now, we have landfills all over the state that are accepting toxic coal ash. And currently, well, before this legislation passed, it was a lot cheaper to put coal ash into those landfills than it was to put regular household garbage. The legislation passed the House 142-15 and the Senate 39-9 and was signed by Governor Kemp. And again, the environmental vote on this one was yes. SB 384 would have protected the Satilla River from toxic industries like landfills. It passed the Senate 40-11, but was not able to pass a vote in the House before the end of the session. The environmental vote would be yes. SB 426 was inspired by communities that discovered cancer clusters around plants that were emitting high levels of ethylene oxide. So it requires the manufacturers using ethylene oxide to report any spill or release within 24 hours of discovery. It passed the House 150-1 and the Senate 55-1, was signed by Governor Kemp recently. The environmental vote is yes. And I think that's all the Senate bills. Let me make sure I covered them all. Yes. So, Bronte, do you want to jump into honorable mentions? And I'll remind you.
Yes, now that I am off, yes, now that I'm off mute. Yeah, I'm happy to talk through honorable mentions. So we recognize that a lot of work happens behind the scenes at the Capitol. Not everything ultimately does come down to a vote. So we want to make sure that we are calling people out for the work that they did that was recognized by our partners in the halls at the Capitol. So the first that we want to kick off with is Senate Bills 297 and House Bill 756. These bills were inspired by residents living close to Plant Shearer who discovered coal ash toxins in their well water. So coal ash is the byproduct left over from burning coal for energy. It's currently being sort of stored in coal ash ponds and things that the environmental community has been advocating to be cleaned up for quite some time. So a community nearby discovered toxins in their well water, and so the bills, Senate Bill 297 and House Bill 756, were sponsored by Senator Jen Jordan, House Minority Leader Bob Trammell, who's on our call today. Hi, Bob. We'll give you a minute to talk a little bit later. And they were some of the most comprehensive pieces of coal ash legislation that were introduced. We also want to recognize Representative Mary Frances Williams, who's also on the call. Hi, Mary. Representative Rick Williams and Representative Jeff Jones. They all deserve praise for introducing coal ash legislation, although their bills ultimately did not pass. Additionally, we want to highlight Senator William Ligon for his tireless work to successfully pass coal ash legislation, Senate Bill 123, and to protect the Satilla River. We also remember House Rules Committee Chairman Jay Powell, who sadly passed away halfway through the legislative session. But he laid the groundwork for legislation to lock in funding for toxic cleanups. So his work and that of Representative Andy Welch, who continued the fight, ensured the passage of the resolution that Georgians will be able to vote on this November. So very, very thankful for their work. We also want to recognize another successful measure, the work of Senator Freddie Powell-Sims and Senator Zara Karanchak, who helped us stop an effort from the Farm Bureau to weaken Georgia's right to farm law with House Bill 545. In the House, Representative Beth Moore and Representative Carla Drenner fought Senate Bill 43, which was the bill to make runaway nuclear plant construction financing easier for Dalton utilities. So all of those are some honorable mentions, and Jeanette will pick up with Representative Carl Gilliard.
Yeah, the next three, Representative Carl Gilliard, Representative Ronnie Stevens, Representative Don Hogan, all helped with that offshore drilling resolution that I mentioned. So it's a great bipartisan group, all working to protect the coast. And we thank them for their work. Representative Eric Allen, we want to thank you for all your work on the sterigenics issue, making sure that communities around the state, but especially in North Metro, were protected from those cancer-causing emissions. Representative Alan Powell, I guess these three kind of fall into the category for me of folks who really listened to their communities and stepped up and solved a problem. So Representative Alan Powell dealt with those creosote-soaked railroad ties that when you burn them create terrible air emissions and water emissions, and he managed to block that process in almost all parts of Georgia. Representative Trey Rose did the same thing for something called land application. So right now, you can take some really nasty stuff like the effluent from chicken processing plants and spread them on fields in Georgia. And this put some teeth into actually managing that process and helps communities that were grappling with some really nasty practices. Senator Donzella James introduced legislation to start to deal with our single-use plastics program. So her bill would have banned plastic trash bags at grocery stores. Representative Scott Turner introduced the first right to repair legislation in Georgia. So right to repair would help to make sure that we're fixing our electronics before we're just throwing them into landfills, and help to keep some of those really sometimes toxic components out of our landfills. Representative Todd Jones introduced a bill to reinstate an electric vehicle tax credit and really help to lead that charge and that effort. We thank him for that. And then Senator Nikema Williams introduced legislation that, again, all these bills that I had at kind of the end didn't actually end up getting votes, but we think are really important bills. So Senator Nikema Williams introduced legislation that deals with lead in school drinking water, so toxic to drink water that we're actually giving our school children. So that's the end of our honorable mentions. We again thank all of you for your really hard work. And now I think we're going to hand it back to Briante. Are you managing this part where we're unmuting folks and muting them and giving them a chance to speak?
Yeah, and so what I'm going to do is I am going to call on the legislators who I see have joined us, and I'm going to unmute you and give you just a minute to chime in with your thoughts, your ideas, what happened during the session, what you want to see happen. So just a minute. And so the legislator that I am going to start with is, let's start with Senator Elena Parent. So Senator Parent, if you want to unmute yourself and jump right in.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
We can hear you just fine.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for doing this. One of the things that was really helpful to me actually looking back through the scorecard is it's so nice for groups like those that you all represent to put together one thing. Honestly, it's going to be good reference for later, not necessarily just on like how people were scored, but you know, I mean, you all know so many bills are happening down there that just having the categorization and the reference point, I think, is going to be really valuable. I want to thank you all for all of your work to push the environment and environmental safeguarding forward in a state that, while maybe not the most unfriendly, hasn't been as progressive as I would like on environmental matters. We've definitely been able to do a few good things over the years, stopping some bad bills as well as passing some, but we obviously still have a really long way to go. The environment is a huge issue to me. I know it is to everybody on this call. The big challenge that we're always facing is that it's sometimes hard to have the environment rise. It may be a concern of voters. Yep. Get
right
on.
at time.
Yep. Nope. That's fine. What I want to tell you is, here are the things I want to work on. I think the plastic issue is a really big one. And how do we make progress on that? Because that's really hard. And that's what I was going to say about the environment being an important issue, but not important enough to drive exactly how people vote. And that's, I think, a challenge facing all of us. So I'll stop there.
We are all certainly facing that challenge. Thank you so much, Senator Parent, for joining the call and for all the work that you do at the Capitol. The next person we're going to listen to or to hear from is Senator Jordan. Senator Jen Jordan, are you able to unmute yourself and jump on?
Yep. Thank y'all. I really appreciate this opportunity. I think for me specifically, the coal ash issue is a big deal. I think we were really kind of getting somewhere with the issue when COVID hit, which is disappointing because there really was a groundswell from all around the state. And it doesn't deal just with, you know, Trammell's neck of the woods or middle Georgia. I mean, right up here in metro Atlanta on the banks of the Chattahoochee, you know, we have unlined coal ash ponds. So it's pretty significant to just about every demographic. You know, it's going to be a bipartisan effort when it's all said and done. So that's what I think we should really push on next year. Of course, the sterogenics issue with ETO is going to continue to be a significant issue until we can get, you know, real legislation that actually regulates these facilities in a meaningful way and doesn't let them kind of pump carcinogens into the air. So thank you for all of your work, really appreciate it, and look forward to working with you in the coming years.
Thank you so much, Senator Jordan. Thank you for putting all that work in at the Capitol. Really emerged as a champion this session, and so thank you for coming on the call. The next person we're going to actually switch to an honorable mention. Well, actually, I'm not sure. Let's actually just go with Representative Bob Trammell. Bob, if you could unmute yourself and join us and say a few words.
Hey, first of all, thank y'all so much for doing this, and thank you for your advocacy for environmental issues. I'm traveling. I'm pulling off, so I won't be breaking the law. The one thing I want to say is that you know, out in my part of the state, you know, it might seem like the environment is an issue that is an unlikely issue for voters in my district. But the reality is that every voter in Georgia cares about safe water, cares about safe air, and they care about the outdoors. And when we took on the coal ash fight with House Bill 756 on the House side, there were those who told me that they were going to come after me in a big way. And they certainly are coming after me in a big way. But I want everybody on this call to know that I want to send a message to the polluters. And that is, just like I teach my 3 children age 7, 5, and 2, if you make a mess in Georgia, you are responsible for cleaning it up. And when we get back to the legislative session in 2021, for the 2021-2022 biennium, the polluters better be on notice, because we are coming for them, and they're going to have to be cleaning that mess up. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you so much, Representative Trammell. That, warms my heart. I like to put polluters on notice. We want to have a clean state, clean air, clean water. So thank you for being a champion, and thank you for joining us. I also have on the call Representative Rick Williams, who's an honorable mention. Rick, I don't know if you're able to mute or unmute yourself. I don't see a microphone, but let me just give you a second to see if you can jump in.
Let's see.
Oh, is this you on the phone?
I think so. I tried to unmute, but I lost my picture. So anyway, it's great to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And does that bring me back?
Yeah, we can all hear you.
Okay,
just fine.
Great. Thank you. Coal ash is very important to us. Lake Sinclair down here is where we get all of our water, drinking water, and Plant Branch with all the coal ash ponds, and to fight that fight and to continue, and even all over the state of Georgia, but it really hit home here. And I was honored to lead that fight, and will continue to do so. It's always a pleasure to be with my fellow legislators in the House and in the Senate, and share our fight, nonpartisan, for a cleaner Georgia, a cleaner, more environmentally friendly state. So I'm honored to be here. I thank you for that mention, and I look forward to 2021 getting back to the fight and holding their feet to the fire.
All right. Thank you so much, Representative Williams. We appreciate that. It's really important when you have an issue emerge in your backyard to be a leader on that, and you've emerged as a leader for your community. So thank you for all of your time, and I look forward to working with you in 2021. Let us move on to Representative Mary Frances Williams. Mary Frances, love to hear from you.
Okay, thanks so much for this forum, and thanks for the scorecard. It's really helpful. So coal ash is at the top of my list. One of the first things I learned after one of my earliest meetings of House Natural Resources and Environment Committee was about the 6 million plus tons of coal ash sitting on the banks of the Chattahoochee at Plant McDonough. It's something of great concern to me. It's being moved to unlined pits, and big utilities just do not seem to be willing to accept responsibility for, as Leader Trammell said, cleaning up their messes. And in my mind, Georgia's lakes and rivers belong to Georgians. They are not the private trash cans and sewage dumps of big utilities. So I really want us to be like other states that are requiring lined pits for all coal ash. The other thing I'll say in general that I've observed is there's a trend in this, it's legislation that crosses over many different bills and resolutions that deal with the environment. And that is, there's a trend to try and, number one, not release information to the public, whether it be about spills or leaks or, the information about what's actually in the water down at Plant Share, where so many people have been poisoned by their well water. And, or maybe we don't, we've had to push for people to find out when water is being released when coal ash ponds are dewatered. And then there are situations like with the Shore Protection Act where we actually lost a fight, but there to be, I think, amendments to that process with hearings that involve local people. It just seems to me a trend. Don't tell people about what's happening, and as much as possible, take away their input and any power they have to stop a process or an approval of anything that affects the environment. And that really is of concern to me, and I think it's a pretty dangerous trend.
Mm-hmm.
So coal ash will be at the top of my list, but watching lots of other things too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative Williams. We appreciate you for being on the call and for being a leader on this issue. Coal ash is obviously the hot topic. There's plenty of bills that we had in play this session that we hope to see taken up again next year, so that we can do a thorough job in cleaning up this waste. So thank you for being so strong in leading us. And another person who is 100% is Senator Nan Orrock. So Nan, if you could jump on and say a few words, we'd appreciate hearing from you as well.
Thanks so much, Briante and Jeanette and all of the advocates and stakeholders that are on this call, along with the legislators. It's a great step forward for the League of Conservation Voters to be back in play in Georgia. You know, calling for accountability in public service, and just providing so many resources as an environmental community of advocates to legislators to fight these good fights. If anybody ever needs inspiring, the National Parks series that Ken Burns did, that's available widely, public broadcasting. He said at a certain, in covering the battle for to secure public land and protect it, that if there hadn't been environmental advocacy today in the Grand Canyon, there would be condos owned by the super rich, and the rest of the rest of the people of our nation and world could not be there and appreciate that incredible natural resource. And that really struck me. You know, there's people on this phone call and the organizations represented here, and those of us that are in public service, we're upholding, you know, more than a century of environmental advocacy, and it really makes a difference. And I feel like we're coming on strong in Georgia to bring our voices together to continue to advocate and protect our precious environment. You know, I'm on the National Caucus of Environmental Legislators board, and that's a national organization that brings us together. Some group of legislators here formed the Environmental Working Group, just putting that together. So that'll be a great ally going forward. And I just appreciate the fact that there's bipartisan participation around these vital issues that affect every single person living and breathing and generations to come. So thank you all so much for the recognition and for the education. And let's really work on this HR 164, the ballot measure that's going to put, you know, try to get the money back into the hazardous waste fund and the solid waste fund, the trust funds for communities to use. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate your leadership, Nan. Always, you know, I always see you working really hard in halls for environment. So thank you. And so, yeah, I think we've heard from all 100%ers who are on the call. Just gonna do a quick check. And we also heard from our honorable mention, Representative Rick Williams. Thank you. So, okay. I think we've hit everyone. So thank y'all for joining us. Now is the time for, what I'll do is go through and say all the names out loud for people who received 100% scores, so that for the folks who were not on the call, that they're also being recognized. So we have Senator Lester Jackson, District 2, Senator Sheikh Rahman, District 5, Senators Michael Rett, District 33, Nan Orrock, District 36, Stephen Henson, District 41, Elena Parent, District 42, Sarah Karenshak, District 48, and Gloria Butler, District 55. Our representatives are Representative Mary Frances Williams, District 37, Eric Allen, District 40, Josh McLaurin, District 51, Representative Patricia Gardner, District 57, William Bodie, District 62, Deborah Bazemore, District 63, Derek Jackson, 64, Kimberly Alexander, District 66, Rhonda Burnett, District 77, Michael Walensky, District 79, Matthew Wilson, District 80, Rebecca Evans, District 83, and Beth Moore, District 95, and Sam Park, District 101. So those are all of our, oh, there's more representatives, sorry. Representative Donna McLeod, District 105, Shelley Hutchinson, District 107, Jasmine Clark, 108, Spencer Fry, 118, Sheila Nelson, District 125, Bob Trammell, District 132, James Beverly, 143, Camilla Hobson, 153, and J. Craig Gordon, 163. So these are all legislators that have received 100%. Thank you all so much for your work. We are excited to have you in leadership at the Capitol. And so I want to now, turn it over to Jeanette, if you want to say anything before we open up to Q&A.
I'll just say thank you again to all the legislators who stepped up. It really takes champions down at the Capitol to get things done. And between the honorable mentions and the 100%ers, I think we captured a lot of our champions. So thank you so much. Yeah, looking forward to the legislative session next year.
So I'm going to open it up to Q&A and, other comments if folks want to ask questions. You can drop them in the chat, or I hesitate to say come off mute, but if that's the only way you can get your question asked, please do. And, okay.
Briante, you and I, it seems like we could also just drop our contact information in the chat box. And if folks have other questions, we don't have to take questions now, but we're happy to talk. So I'll go ahead and put mine in the chat box. And
okay, and I see that Senator Kay Kirkpatrick is here and would like to speak. So I'm going to go ahead and let Kay have a few words.
Thank you. Although I wasn't on your list, I can assure you that as a physician, I do care about public health, and the environment's a big part of that. And I just wanted to say that it's a good thing that environmental issues frequently are bipartisan. And I think we saw that this session. I was very happy to work with some people across the aisle on the ethylene oxide issue and also on right to farm. And what I wanted to say about right to farm is that you all need to know that stories really matter. When the individuals who were really affected by that came to the Capitol, showed pictures, told their story, I think it really resonated with legislators. So that's what I wanted to tell you. Looking forward to the next session. Thank you.
Senator.
Thank you so much. Stories do matter, and I do appreciate all of the people on this call who've shared, especially the legislators, representatives and senators who've shared stories with their colleagues in the hallways. I appreciate all of the wonderful activists and volunteers and just really committed environmental community members that are on this call today, who I've seen at the Capitol as well, talking to their legislators about these important issues and sharing these stories about how it's impacting them. Environment and climate can often seem very much focused on data and science, but this is something that touches each and every one of us personally. And so, yeah, it's wonderful to have legislators like the legislators who join this call, who feel like environment is as a core value they hold, to join this call and to continue to be strong leaders under the Capitol, under the Gold Dome. So I'm not seeing any questions coming in the chat.
Hi, I just unmuted myself, I'm sorry. For your methodology, do you have like a threshold for a pass fail? Is it just 70, or do you guys have a different approach to that? If someone like failed this report card, this scorecard rather.
Jeanette, you want to jump in and then I can follow up?
We don't really have a pass fail, so we haven't handed out kind of passing or failing awards. We are obviously recognizing the people that got 100%, because I think that's a real sign of commitment to these issues. But maybe it's a needs improvement as opposed to a fail.
Okay. Very diplomatic. I was just So good to hear. Thank you.
And I'll just reiterate, like, we don't want it to be punitive. We really want it to be a place to have conversations, a place to start a conversation with a legislator or continue a conversation with the legislator. So if you've got a legislator with a low score, just look at that as an opportunity to talk to them and tell your story about why you care about these issues and to help them sort of move along on the.
Briante, this is Nan Orrock, and I had a quick question. Who is spearheading? Is there an organization or a coalition that's spearheading the education on the ballot measure about dedicating funds to the hazardous waste, restoring trust to the trust funds, basically? Is there a leading voice coming from the environmental community that's kind of spearheading that education work?
Georgia Water Coalition, I saw your question, Senator. Georgia Water Coalition should have a website up on that issue. I was actually checking to see if it is up today. I don't think it is, but it should be up any minute, and we'll be sure to share it with all the folks who are on this call and obviously lots of other people.
Yeah, the newly formed South Metro public elected officials band together around this, wanting to help educate. It's kind of beneath the radar, but it has incredibly big implications for every community in this state to have those funds in place for them to access for these cleanups. And also, everybody on this call will be interested to know, if you go to the Environmental Protection Division, there's a list by county of all the hazardous waste sites in the state. Educate yourself and be on guard. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a big topic. I still remember having the scrapitol get built at the Capitol, the scrap tires, to make the point that we had so much waste that needed to be cleaned up. So yeah, hopefully that effort is successful. We're all in on it. And so also a member of the Georgia Water Coalition to help raise awareness about that issue ahead of Election Day. So thanks for asking. Any more questions? Feel free to come off mute. It doesn't seem like we're having a whole lot of people trying to unmute at once, so it's safe. All right. Hearing none, all hearts and minds clear.
Thank you all. Right. Bye, everybody. Don't forget to vote.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Much appreciated. And again, we're happy to keep talking about this if you want to just give us a call or email us. Y'all have a lovely rest of the day and weekend.
A great meeting. Thank you all.